Okay, hey folks, we're going to talk today about the second phase here of the Market Force class, and hopefully this recording will turn out all right and you guys will be able to use it. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our screen share. So again, remember, as a recap, Market Force is just it's a game. It's a game we're all playing, and the game is to gain market force. And so we want to talk to you about what that looks like. Market force is constantly being evaluated by others at all time. So you don't own your own market force. Nike has a market force. Sony has a market force. Apple has a market force. And you have your own market force. But you don't actually own it. Your customers own it. The people around you, your friends, your family, your clients, your colleagues, they own their assessment of you. And that's the bad news. The good news is that you can affect that assessment in the future by the actions you do now. But in the moment, market force is being evaluated by other people at all times, whether or not you can produce or perform for them. Remember, there's moves in market force. There's a concept that market force isn't given. It can only be appropriated. In other words, you got to take it. Nobody gives you top producer. You don't get given that. You don't get best broker in the downtown. You're not the best investment broker, best apartment broker. Nobody can give that to you. You have to actually do it. You have to show up and produce it. Okay, market force can only be appropriated to the extent that you enhance the market force of others. You've got to make them special. You got to make them bigger and better. Market force is a consequence of being invisible in transaction. This is a hard one for people. What this means is that when you get the work, your job is to get it done for the client in a way that there's no breakdowns, because people become visible when there's a breakdown. When does your electricity become visible? When it doesn't work. When does your Wi-Fi become visible? When it's broken. When does your copy machine become visible? When it doesn't work. That's when you really start paying attention to it. And it's the same thing in your service. And what happens, real estate brokers miss this. They think, oh, I want to be around all the time. I want to be in front of my client all the time. Do you think your client really wants to spend a lot of time with you, or they want to get it done? So your job is to try and get it done in a way that they feel like, gosh, every time I deal with Craig, it's handled. And I don't have to think about it. It's invisible to me. All right. And so if they're thinking about you, it's because you're not doing their service that they want. They're having to think, well, why isn't he calling me? Well, how come he hasn't got that document back to me? That's when you become visible. So you want to be invisible in transaction. I'm not saying before, or I'm not saying after. Before, you want to be highly visible because you want them to pick you. And after, it gives you a chance to maybe become friends and do other things with them. But during the transaction, working with them, you don't want to make it look like you're showing them everything you're doing. You want that to get it done for them in a way that they feel really good about it, okay? Market force is a consequence of accelerating the transaction, okay? That means making it go faster. And so what happens, a lot of people they miss this concept. They think that market force, that just being there all the time and being in front of the client's thinking you're slowing it down. So speeding it up makes you grow your market force. And market force is dynamic. It's constantly gained or lost. It's never flat. Okay, it's constantly going up or down. And because your market is evaluating you at all times. That's the stock market is a big example of market force at all times. Successful transactions build market force. If you transact, you build market force. But remember, the word transaction is a bigger word. It means anytime you interact with somebody. So it could mean when you're changing, dollars and, the loonies and, money's changing hand, that's a transaction. But it could be a shake of a hand, a friendship. It could be, I'll get that FedEx out on time. That's a transaction. I'll answer your phones. I'll cover your back. I'll negotiate for you. I'll make sure that the market report gets completed. Those are all transactions. The transaction you have with your manager saying, I'm going to learn this business and I'm going to work hard is a transaction. Okay. So again, make sure you understand, even coming to a stoplight and looking at another person and they're looking at you, you are now transacting with them. Who's going to go first? Do we use the right of way? What do we have? So that's transaction, okay? And then there's 4 moves in market force. There's 4 main moves of power in market to build your market force: identity, relationship, value, and choice. Your job is to establish an identity. And once you do that, you can have a relationship, and then you can establish value, and then people can choose. So again, here's the map. A lot of people try and start this business at relationship. I just want to have a relationship with you. And they don't realize that identity is what's needed, because identity is what drives the opportunity for relationship. If you decided to do your cold calls with Wayne Gretzky, or think of the big name person in your market that people would really identify with, the identity is so great, people will want to have a relationship with you. So it proves that identity drives into relationship. On the other side of it, if you had a criminal on your team, They might be so afraid of working with you that a well-known criminal, they might not want to work with you, might not want to have a relationship with you. So identity establishes whether you can have it or not. It accelerates your ability to get into a relationship. Because remember, this whole training is counterintuitive. We're teaching you how to observe everything that's going around you already and learn how to move on it quickly and pull extraneous movement out of the transaction. So, because remember, when you're running, every move that isn't a normal running move is inefficient. If you ever ran with somebody and you can hear their feet sliding on the ground, that's inefficient. If you hear people that are loud runners, it's inefficient. You ever seen anybody run and they do something weird with their arm or their leg? It's inefficient. And so what we're trying to do is teach you how to observe the basic building blocks of moving the transaction forward. And then we're going to then show you when you're not. So you're going to know when not to waste time, okay? So what you want to do is you want to think about who in your office has really good identity. You know, think of who in your life do you know that's built good identity that you know. You're like, everybody knows them. They have an established identity. It's not that they have a relationship. They have an identity. They're known for something. Who in your office or who do you know that is really good at relationships? You're bound to know somebody that's just a super relationship person, okay? And is there somebody in your office that you know that delivers value, or a friend of yours that delivers value? And you say, you know, I'm gonna move on Saturday, and they're like, hey, I'll help you. You know, they're there to value. They're there to deliver value. They'll help you. They're the helper types, okay? They're, you know, gonna get together and they're the last one at the party helping you do the dishes or whatever, or they're the person that says, yeah, I'll help you do the tour, and they're there for you. Okay, who has that? And who in your office is really good or in your life is good at making assertions? That means promise to provide evidence. So they're looking at it and they're saying, oh, you know, I can look through and help you, you know, think through what you're doing. And there are people you go to for advice. You know, hey, I'm thinking of buying a phone. And they're like, yeah, well, I did a spreadsheet. Or I'm thinking of buying a car. Yeah, this is the best place to buy a car. You know, they're really good. They can provide the evidence. Okay, and then can you think of a cold call that if you had, you know, Kobe Bryant, or you had Wayne Gretzky, or you had some name that, you know, you decide the popular person, whether it's Trudeau or or Trump, or it's some incredible, you know, international diplomat, or I don't know, but think of who would be on a call that would make your calls more effective. I know Roger Staubach made a lot of money in real estate because he was a great football, you know, player, and so he, you know, called a lot of people, and they did deals with him because they were like, "Wow, Roger Staubach's on the phone," and they would take his phone call because he established his identity. And then who in your office is really you see walking around judging and complaining, but actually not getting things accomplished, because people mix up judging and complaining with changing their future. They think that if they judge and they complain, that's going to affect a new future, and it doesn't affect a new future. It doesn't move the ball forward. Judgmental language does not create performance, okay? So we go into the market force and we look at this concept of identity, relationship, value, and choice. And what you'll find is market force is about this concept of generating choices for people. So choices for you to work for them and choices for them to work with you. It's freedom of choice. It's a very important concept in the business. And so what happens is that if you are a solution to their concern, then they can choose you. You're never forcing people in market force. You're not forcing them to do stuff. That's a really important concept. Market force is about freedom of choice, okay? And if you do, they get to choose and you deliver, you choose to work with them and you deliver, then you get what we call mutual satisfaction, and that produces prosperity. So it's a really cool concept that the choice they make and the choice you make produces prosperity. Now, in a lot of parts of the world, you don't get to make choices, and there's this thing called brute force. And brute force is the attempt to cause people to act without allowing for choice. That's pushing things on people. It's really hard to do that as a broker, but it's easy to do that as a manager on a broker, or sometimes it's easy to do that as an owner on a broker, okay? So people have a tendency to resort to this when their survival mechanism is threatened. When they feel at risk, then they start, you know, putting the iron fist down. And so again, this is not a good strategy, and you go out through human history and look at the application of this, and it creates a lot of suffering and a lot of poverty. So there are whole societies that were built on brute force, where people said, this is the way it's going to be, period, and if you don't do that, we're going to rough you up. So brute force is it's a natural tendency for human beings to drop into brute force. So next time you find yourself forcing somebody on your team to do something, or wanting to force somebody in your office that they need to do something, you're going to find yourself in a brute force move. Okay, so when in breakdown, you want to make sure that you're interpreting this, because most people, when there's a break in the action, they interpret the threat as an automatic move to brute force. You know, the people aren't showing up on our Wednesday meetings, so because of that, we're going to mandate it. Okay, so brute force is about taking the authority. If you look, it says authority, and then going backwards and saying, I'm going to seize the power, and then going and tell everybody, you got to like it so that I can have control. And the beatings will stop as soon as the morale improves around here. That's a brute force move, and it takes more energy than you get out. So it's not a good move in business. Okay, so let's talk about how to build market force with language. Language, you build it. Human beings are social animals. We coordinate action through language. Okay, all accomplishment happens through language. That is our one amazing thing that we've got that is better than any other. A lot of people say it's the opposable thumb. It's not, because you don't need a thumb to be a real estate broker. Okay, you need a mouth. You need language. You need to speak and coordinate language, and it's really amazing. All accomplishment happens through language. It's our secret weapon, and you need to be really good at it. And so the whole idea is to perfect it. And so we got to shift to the concept of performative language, performance-based language rather than judgmental language. It's a really important concept. Performance-based language, if you go to a basketball game, what you'll notice is that you look around and you'll see all these people in the audience, and they're all having judgments about the game. And then you'll see these people down on the court, and they're all having a performance, and they're coordinating action with each other. They're talking to each other. It's performance-based language. And so what happens is that the people in the audience are paying to be there, and the people on the court are getting paid to have the performance. So what you'll find is the performance-based language moves the ball forward and gets things going, and judgmental language costs money. So you want to pull your judgmental language out of business because it does not move the ball forward. And we're going to talk to you about it, what that means. Okay, so to achieve prosperity in the game, you need to learn the language of accomplishment. You need to learn and the language of accomplishment is performance-based. And you have to figure out what your intention is. So intentionality is an important aspect, okay? Because when you understand your intention, you can then coordinate the actions of other people. So when JFK said, he declared, we are going to the moon and back, there was an intentionality behind that to show that the North American, the American system, the whole concept of understanding how there could be a private and public partnership, this concept of capitalism and the freedom of markets was better than the controlled market of communism. And so that's why we wanted to win, because there was an intentionality behind it, and that coordinated action. And that's in performative language. So performative speaking coordinates action so that humans can generate accomplishment, which facilitates growth, which has success and is measured by prosperity. So performance-based language creates prosperity. So you got to know how to use it. Okay, and so we're going to talk about that. So if you think about it, all you need to do is you need to start with a mouth. Okay, and you need to affect human action through the transaction, through your mouth. You basically say something, and then human beings change and start doing what you want them to do. And there are 4 performative elements to think about. There's 4 ways to do this. Okay, 4. All right, and that is, you can declare, you can promise, you can request, or you can assert. Those are the 4 performance-based moves in language that identify with building identity, relationship, value, and choice. Okay, so you can declare, promise, request, and assert. Everything outside of that is wasted time. So if you say something like, I didn't get the document out on time because, the minute you say because, you're now into assessment. You're not in declaration, promise, request, or assert. Because assertion is the promise to provide evidence for the benefit of moving the project forward, not for substantiating why you didn't do something. Okay, so you don't have time for that. All right, so assertions are and we'll go with each one of them and what they are. So you want to make sure you're in a performance-based language rather than judgmental. So their declarations are promises for the future. Okay, that's a promise for the future that says, I promise that we will do this in the future. And you need to think about, have you made any declarations in your business? Have you actually any promises for the future? Well, let me give you an example of what I mean by that. When I got in the business, I decided I wanted to do something big. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I'm like, I got to do something big. And so I decided that I was going to sell the sports arena. Okay, and the sports arena was privately owned, and I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. One day I want to sell the sports arena. So I told a bunch of my friends around me, hey, I'm going to sell the sports arena. And the minute I said that, a whole group of people said, no, can't be done, impossible, waste of time, why are you even thinking about it? They're sat around in this state of tranquilized distrust, resentment, resignation that, good luck with that, Craig, not going to happen. Okay, it's privately owned. Nobody will get rid of it. It's too complicated. You're just a broker. You're never going to be able to sell that. Okay, so they told me not going to happen. But it was really interesting. I had this one guy that was like Stephen Katz, and he's our financial guru. And he said, boy, wouldn't it be really interesting how to underwrite that? That would be interesting. What would you have to be able to do to be able to underwrite that? And so we started, concocting this plan of, what did I need to have on a resume to be able to establish that? I needed to have some big deals under my belt. I needed to be able to do financial underwriting that was really complex. I needed to know the buyer market. I needed to understand the entertainment market. There's a lot of stuff I needed to understand. So I started digging in. I made a declaration for the future. Whenever you make a declaration, one or two things are going to happen. A group of people are going to come up and say, can't be done, don't push it, not possible. And another group of people are going to say, hey, possibly. So when JFK said we're going to the moon, they said, no way, not happening. We got starving people in Appalachia. We got people that are illiterate in Mississippi. We got all kinds of problems with our, too many people in jail. We've got social unrest. We got a lot of things going on, not possible. And then another group of scientists sat down and said, wow, I wonder if that would be solid or liquid. So who got hired in that deal? Clearly the solid or liquid guys did. So remember, whenever you make a declaration, people around you are going to conspire generally, because people don't like people to declare that future. If you declared that you were going to be the best office building broker or the best office leasing broker in your market, think of the people in your office that would say, no, you're not. I'm the best. There's going to be people because they're not going to go, oh, Craig, great job. That's such a good declaration. Now your manager might say that, but the other producers are going to say, they're not going to say, wow, this is great. Let me roll out the red carpet for you. They're not going to do that. Declarations are, you take them. And you've got to declare your future. So please make sure you have a declared future. The second thing to move the ball forward is you got to promise, okay? And you think of the promises that you've made right now in your office. And you have these people in the office and they go, no, Craig, I haven't made that many promises. I'm brand new. I promise you, you have made promises, okay? Because look, brand new people have made a promise to the manager that they're going to learn the business. They're going to show up on time. They're going to be clean cut. They're going to support colliers. They're going to support the person they're working with. They're going to get the documents out. They're going to do the tours. They're going to do the research. They're going to make cold calls. They're going to come to acceleration. They're going to do all this stuff because they've made promises. Now think of, for those of you that are more senior, what promises have you made to your market? What promises do your clients believe that you've made to them for now? A promise for now. Okay, so the declarations are a promise for future. Promises are a promise for right now. And think of the promises you made at home, the promises you made with your friends, and the promises you made at work. And if you don't have very many, you're not accelerating transaction. You're not going to build market force. Then it's also requests. That's the third one. Now, request is a promise to be satisfied. Okay, now a promise to be satisfied basically says, I will promise that I will be satisfied if this happens. Think of the requests you've made in your office right now. Have you made any requests of people? Do they know what you've requested of them? Because what you'll find is a lot of people mess up on requests. Let me give you an example. You're sitting around the office and the internet just went out. And so people just sit around and complain about that. The internet's out. The internet's out. It's such a bummer the internet's out. But you know what? They're not actually going and talking to IT. They're not calling their manager. They're not trying to figure out how to solve it. They're just figuring if I sit in my office and complain about it, that it's going to change my future. So you have to have an effective request to change your future. You got to go to people and say, I need this document by here. I need this, by here. I need this money wired by this time. All that stuff. Those are effective requests. So we got to think through effective requests. Okay, and then last, and I have an error here. It says assertions are promises to be satisfied. That's not it. Assertions are promises to provide evidence. Okay, so I need to change that. Assertions are a promise to provide evidence. Providing evidence is really important because I'll get you the comps. I'll show you what the financial analysis is. We'll do the property tour. I'll take the photos and we'll show you the condition of the property. Those are all promises to provide evidence. I'll show you that we'll get a lot of offers. I promise we're going to show up. We're going to get this into the market and there's going to be a lot of people that are interested in that. These are promises to provide evidence. Those are assertions. These are your 4 basic steps. Critically important to moving the ball forward. And what you want to do is you want to think through how you're going to get these steps going and in your language. If you find yourself at any time in a judgmental conversation about stuff, just complaining to the wrong person that can't do anything, you are slowing your transaction down. And our job is to teach you how to do less work. Pulling judgments out of it is a key. Most people in football don't come back and say, I didn't catch the ball because the sun was in my eyes and that guy didn't throw the block. I mean, they're like, you got 13 seconds to call the next play. You don't have time to sit around and talk about that. So that's why I talk about this concept of using the language effectively. Okay, so think about this. What declarations have you made about your business? What specific promises have you made to your colleagues or clients? Do you listen for requests from others even when they're not making one? Okay, because those are people, if you've got friends and you sit there and say, oh, the internet's out and they're already on the phone dialing IT, that's a person that heard your request even when you didn't make one. Okay, moms are usually really good at this. You go, they know their kids are cranky and they know it's because they haven't been eating. And so they feed them before the kid even knows how to ask for it. So moms learn how to do that, but you've got to learn how to do that with your clients. Okay, you got to listen to the requests. So when they're complaining, they're usually requesting and you've got to get on that. Okay, or is there a person in your office that is the one that verifies everything? Are you the person that when somebody says something, you pick up your phone immediately and look on Google to see if it's true? Because it's a very valuable trait people have, the ability to look stuff up, to provide evidence, to show up with the evidence, to do the financial underwriting, to get the comps, to do the lease comps, to understand how the sign rights played into that lease. That's all the promise to provide evidence. Okay, so again, that's assertion. So this is what you want to be thinking about in terms of how you're operating. Okay, so now that we understand this concept that there's this market force game going on and that language is the thing that moves it forward, we're going to start finding out that people have habits around language. And so we need to understand human behavior. So this is going to be the interesting part, because human behavior will really give you a better idea of how to play the game. So to study human behavior, the first thing I like to do is look at it and say, let's study nature first. So in parts of Canada and parts of the United States right now, the snow's coming down, or the snow's about whenever, winter's here and or coming. Animals do one of four things. Okay, they either dictate, they migrate, they tolerate, or they hibernate. Okay, so a beaver will dictate their surroundings. They'll carve out a whole lake and they'll build a hut in the middle of the lake and they'll just weather it out. So they're dictators. They say this is the way it's going to be. And so geese, they'll fly south and they'll migrate. They'll move away. They're like, nope, not going to be there, not happening. Then you'll have a moose, or you'll have elk and stuff, and they'll basically tolerate. Okay, they'll just eat frozen snow and they'll just weather through it. They'll hang out, they'll tolerate it, or they'll hibernate. They'll just go into a place and fall asleep. And what you'll find is human beings do the same thing. When faced with risk, human beings do the same thing. They migrate, they leave, they dictate, they go to war. They say this is the way it's not happening under my watch. They go to war. They hibernate. They create committees, and they all think about it. Like, we're going to have a committee. We got to think about it. We really got to spend some time, noodling on this one. Okay, and it looks like hibernation because there's no action, because they're all just sitting around talking about it. Okay, there's lots of governments do this one, or they tolerate. Okay, they just muscle through it. We're just going to deal with it. All right, and so we're just going to, it's just the way it's going to be, and we're going to deal with it. Human beings do the same thing. So I'm not the first guy to notice this. Okay, this has been going on forever. I mean, this is as long as there's been the written word, this stuff's been shown up. Socrates talked about the behavioral patterns. He started seeing that people were action-oriented or thinking. Some were task-driven, some were relationship. Hippocrates wrote about these personality models, and Plato wrote about sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, and melancholy. So these people all said, people think differently. Some people thought it was in your blood and they didn't know, so they were thinking, I just see that people are operating differently. And some people are a certain way, and we're not sure where that's coming from. And well, a lot of this got studied pretty heavily in World War II because everything got compressed. And Myers-Briggs did a lot of work on this, and social styles got put together where people started thinking through. They analyzed, some of the World War II, flying aces, and they wanted to figure out what makes them an ace, what makes them think certain ways, and what makes leaders, and how assertive are they, and how emotive are they? Do they emote? How versatile are they? They started doing all these studies. Okay, and what they found was that there were 5 basic big personality traits that came out. Conscientiousness. Okay, are people efficient, organized, or easygoing and careless? Think of it as a spectrum for you, because everyone is on that spectrum. You're either efficient and organized, or you're easygoing and careless, or you're somewhere in between. Where are you on the spectrum? You're not out of the spectrum. Okay, so you're one of those things. Okay, and high conscientious people want to achieve and plan. People that were really high conscientious, they're like, I got to make plans. Okay, open people are openness and experience. These people on the spectrum of inventive and curious, or consistent and cautious. Really highly open people want to engage in creative activities all the time. So you probably have people in your office in the marketing department that fit in that zone. That's openness. Again, everyone's on the spectrum. Okay, extroverted. Okay, you can be really extroverted or outgoing and energetic, or you can be solitary and reserved. You all know where you are. You could be in the middle. You could be, maybe towards the solitary, maybe towards the outgoing. It just depends. Extroverted people want lots of friends. You can be agreeable. Are you friendly and compassionate, or are you challenging and detached? Okay, and you'll find that challenging and detached people, a lot of times they're very competitive and they want to win. Okay, and friendly and compassionate people are easygoing and less able to. And they found out that all these things correlate with each other. And then there's this thing called neuroticism. Okay, now neuroticism, everyone is on the spectrum of neuroticism. I got news for you. If you're a human being, you're neurotic in some way. Okay, and are you sensitive and nervous, or are you over secure and confident? Okay, because that's the range. Okay, so you're one of them. So everyone has just a certain kind of neuroses. Okay, so don't take that negatively. Think of it in terms of how you think. High neuroticism people, want security. In other words, people that want sensitive and nervous people want to make things really secure. Okay, whereas secure and confident people, they don't care. They'll change the world. They're like, hey, it doesn't have to be secure for them because they think they can work through it. So you think of these things and you think, well, wow, but this is still pretty complicated. Craig, I don't know how to work this with my client. And, so what happened is people said, well, let's make this better. Let's make this easier. So DISC came out, Myers-Briggs, TRACOM, PI, whole colors, animals. All these systems came out of trying to figure out how to break it down into 4 zones that you could start seeing that people had coherence with each other. And these things work together, and they started finding out that, hey, some of these things kind of go together. Like when somebody's this way, then they're probably going to be this way. In fact, these things are covariants. They work together. Sort of like saying, me asking you a question, hey, do you smile often? On the spectrum, do you smile often? And then maybe I say, are you happy often? And what you'll find is that people that smile a lot are oftentimes happy a lot. They're covariant. They work together. And what they found out was that there was a set of traits that human beings had that all started working together. And this is a really interesting concept. In other words, you could start predicting how people think, because there was a really high probability that analytical people were going to create security. There was starting to be this covariance between both of them. They started, oh, wow. And if you can start getting to understand that, you can start changing the way you operate around people to help them get more comfortable. And so we're going to teach you a very simple model on this. Now, some of you, when you came to work, you had your predictive index test. When I came to work, I had a Myers-Briggs test. But I've had DISC, predictive index, I've done all of them. And I've studied and trained under a number of these and actually taught some of these. But I'm going to show you a more simplified one that we've used that really works, and it's going to keep going over with the map that we were going with. 40% of the companies in North America use a model to do hiring. So, but all of these models have missed one big thing. They missed the core motivators. They don't understand what's at the core of what's motivating people. It's not that they don't understand it. They understand it. They don't spend enough time talking about it, because if you understand what motivates people, you can understand how they're going to make decisions, and it can help you accelerate transaction. Okay, so again, when you think about it, dictate, migrate, tolerate, or hibernate, that's a motivation. When animals are faced with risk, they either dictate, migrate, tolerate, or hibernate. It's in their motivation. Okay, now, here's the problem. When human beings are faced with risk, they can't tell the difference between risk in the office and risk out in the wild. So they believe it's like they're going to get eaten by a lion, or they've gone to war, or they're fighting a fire, or they're in a street fight, or they're being chased by zombies. Like when you're cold calling, people's biology can't tell the difference. So what happens is people, when they're having upset at work, they are having actually a behavioral, biological breakdown that is inconsistent with what's really happening, because your biology doesn't know the difference. It's very hard to turn your biology off. And it's the same with your clients. And I got news for you on this one. Real estate is really stressful. It's really stressful for your clients. So their biology is going off. Buying it, selling it, leasing it, moving, all that is stressful for folks. They'd rather get back to work on what they know, because real estate, they don't want to make a mistake. So their biology's kicked in and they don't know the difference. But it's the same thing with you. You go into a big meeting with a bunch of really bigwigs. You have 12 people that you got to present to. I promise you, your biology is going to go off, and it's going to get you into this fight or flight syndrome. When you're cold calling, you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, the guy's going to shoot me if I miss it. if you win a cold call, you're running out like you just, solved the world's problems, because it's just your biology doesn't know the difference because the adrenaline's kicking in. Okay, so a lot of people are worried about rejection. They feel like if they get rejected, it's like getting eaten by a lion. You're not getting eaten by a lion, but your body doesn't know any different. And so some of you are okay with this. You're like, hey, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. But most people have an issue with rejection. They don't like rejection. Okay, for those of you that don't, you're lucky. Okay, but those of you that are that are in the normal group, you're having to deal with this. Okay, you're having to deal with people being in that zone. Now, biology is triggered typically when people are going to make a decision. Okay, or make it decide to call somebody. That's biology is triggered. But see, simple decisions don't really trigger biology. If you're going to go buy a light bulb, it's not that hard to do. It's a pretty basic understanding. I need this much wattage. I need it to be this color. Go buy it. I need it to be this size. It's not a big deal. Easy decision. But then you go in and you try to get other decisions. Major decisions involve more variables. And what happens is mostly people have too many variables. They cannot. There's too much coming at you to make any kind of a logical decision. Really, if you really think about it, if you're going to go buy a car, there's so many data points. It's almost impossible to make a logical decision. You basically say, I really like that red car. And a lot of times people make their decision emotionally. In fact, most of the time they make it emotionally. And what they try and do is they try and evoke a good positive emotion about it by trying to explain it away rationally after they've made the decision. I have a little picture here that's kind of neat. There's an office building right next to a house. Some of you are going to go out and help a client really look hard for their office space, and then one day you're going to find out they made that lease because that was the closest commute to their house. And they told everybody they were making it for all these rational reasons. The bottom line, it was on the commute. Okay, buy a boat. That is not rational. Okay, buy a big, huge boat. It's just like, in fact, my friend owns a boat, told me it's like flushing $100 bills down a toilet every time the toilet refills. Just flush, 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 just 24/7. Because that's how expensive a boat is. It's super expensive. Okay, and I mean, you can go rent a boat, but people buy them. Sometimes people, marry the wrong person emotionally. They don't think about it. So, and then people think about these things rationally. Oh, I need the boat for entertainment. I really need that. That's really good for my business. Or, she was the perfect woman for me at that time. So what happens is people make these decisions based irrationally, and then they try to feel good about them. But again, when faced with it, you're going to go into this program where you're going to get a dump of this adrenal cortex. It's going to dump something in your adrenaline's going to kick in, and you're going to get an increased heart rate, and you're going to get sweaty palms, and you're going to get sweat on your brow, and you're going to have more attention, and that is going to happen. And that is the way, and you need to just get ready for it. Okay, and you're going to not sleep at night and all kinds of stuff because your body thinks you're getting eaten, and you're not. It's insufficient. Your biology is not sufficient in today's world. So what I want to teach you is how to use language to try and compensate for that. Okay, so again, the 4 survival concerns now for people. So human beings, when they're faced with risk, remember the animals, when they're faced with risk, dictate, migrate, tolerate, hibernate. Well, human beings have certainty, freedom, stability, and security. Okay, they default to these habits. All of you have one of these that you default to when faced with risk. You want to stabilize everything, make sure nothing falls down, make sure that we're all good, systems in place, or you want to create security where everybody's safe and you've got money in the bank and even if things go wrong, you're okay, you're safe. Okay, if you're going to go on a camping trip, I'm going to have extra food and we're going to have all the extra stuff. So in case we get stuck, we're going to be okay. Stable people are saying, we're going to make sure that we're on a flat ground and everything's stable. And, we're going to make sure that everybody's, holding up their weight. And freedom people are going to say, look, I don't even want to bring anything. I'm just going to live off the land. And certainty people are like, I need to be certain that this is exactly the campground we're going to because I want to know everything I need to bring for that exact campground. Okay, and you'll see this default. So it happens for human beings at transaction, okay? And it happens when there's choices that need to be made. And it's bigger, and people default into it when they perceive a bigger amount of risk. Okay, so when you feel like this is a lot of risk, then certainty starts kicking in. So now a client's starting to think about doing the lease and it's going to be expensive. And then all of a sudden, if they're a certainty player, they start thinking about how certain they want to make sure that this lease is going to be in place exactly the way they want it. It's going to be, everything's going to be perfect. freedom players are going to be like, oh, wow, I don't know. I can't make a commitment. I'd rather we didn't have a lease at all. Is there a suite we can get into where we can get out at any time? So they'll craft something that they can bail out of. And stability people will create, talk about how everybody's got to work together and how everybody's going to be happy and stable in there. And security people will talk about, is the owner got to, does the owner have enough money? Are they going to be a good landlord? Or is this building going to be run right? Or are we going to have good security in the building? Is there security for the parking? That's the kind of thing that people default to. And what you find is that you're really good at one of these, and you're typically not good at another one, and the other two you're okay at. Okay, and it's the same thing with your client, and it's a problem if you're really good at one and your client's not really good at another. So that's kind of where we want you to be thinking about. Okay, where are we with this? Well, we want to make sure that you understand that risk happens for people at transaction, and there's this concept of creating certainty, freedom, stability, and security, which identifies also with the people. Certainty players often create identity. Relationship players often create freedom. Value players often create stability. And choice players often create security. You'll see this over and over in your business. And so next time we get together, we're going to go through how we're going to determine and how we're going to move forward on this and help you understand how to use these in your business. So we look forward to that, and I look forward to making sure that all of you have good success in terms of using this. What your homework would be to do is to look and ask yourself who in your office is really good at establishing identity, and where in their life do you see certainty? Who's the person that they want the really good suit, and they want the really good car, and they want to make sure they're reckoned with? That's the identity player. Who in your office is really good at relationship, and how much freedom have they created for themselves? You'll find it that sometimes they don't even come into the office. And sometimes they don't even wear a tie. And oftentimes they're out. You're like, where are they? I don't know, they're in Palm Springs. They're moving. And then value players are going to be there every day, on time, earliest person in, latest person out, there to help everybody. And oftentimes they're industrial brokers that are leasing space. And then you'll have the choice people, and the choice people will be analytical, and they're looking through everything, and they're trying to do analysis. So that gives you an idea of what we're working with as we're moving forward on the market force. For our next call, we'll go through deeper and give you a better understanding of these people so that you can start identifying them. You need to identify you, and then you need to identify your client. But first, we'll start and help you figure out a little bit more about who you are. Thanks.